I don't think the public knows. I think they'd be shocked and probably disgusted.
Why should you keep secrets like this if they potentially harm the public?
We'd like to ask you some questions.
Do you think you got any special treatment?
How do you think the town handled this?
Horribly.
There's just this secret cabal running our town.
This is a substantial crash, substantial injuries, and it was something that was intended to be kept from the eyes of the public.
Why the secrecy?
There wasn't any accountability.
How many landlords have to be robbed from before somebody puts a stop to this?
Why aren't you paying your rent?
I hope you guys can just show what has happened down there. It's not right.
That is just a small sampling of the work the NBC10 investigators have done looking into small town secrets. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Corey Smith. Our investigative team is shining a light on matters some public officials want hidden. So tonight, we'll take you to several communities and share what the investigators have found. We'll head to Holbrook, where our investigators track down a town official who's being investigated for possible double dipping.
We'd like to ask you some questions just about how you can work for MassDOT and for the town.
No comment.
Secrets were uncovered in the town of West Bridgewater involving an elected official who didn't actually live in town.
Anthony, just answer a couple questions. Why are you trying to hide from taxpayers?
And we'll stop in Quincy to hear from a police officer accused of misconduct.
I question whether these actions are becoming of a police officer.
Again, I have no comment on it. I'm not allowed to say anything on the matter.
We'll get to each of those investigations in just a moment, but we're going to begin in Stoneham, where our Ryan Kath got a tip about a high-ranking police officer with a history of stiffing landlords. And as you'll see, law enforcement quickly took an interest in what Ryan found.
That's Detective Sergeant Robert Kennedy arriving for his shift at the Stoneham Police Department. It's a taxpayer-funded career he's held for more than 20 years, but his steady six-figure income apparently isn't enough to pay the rent.
What was your experience with them as tenants?
Terrible. It started getting bad right from the get-go. It was just constantly chase them.
Ron and Betty Gifford rented this home in Woburn to Kennedy and his wife years ago, but the details are still fresh.
It just baffles me how it could go on.
Eventually, the couple reached their financial breaking point, taking Kennedy and his wife to court in 2008 to evict them from the home and winning a judgment of almost $6,000. But 15 years later, the elderly couple told me they're still owed the money.
It was very disappointing to believe that, a police officer would do something like that.
After getting a tip, the NBC10 investigators found it's far from an isolated incident. Fast forward to 2020. Kennedy and his girlfriend moved into this Stoneham apartment complex and stopped paying the rent. Once the pandemic's eviction moratorium was lifted, the landlord kicked them out and won a judgment of more than $24,000. Up next, this apartment complex in Reading, another eviction and another judgment for unpaid rent, this time $30 grand. Over that 3-year period, payroll records we reviewed show Kennedy made a total of more than $500,000 as a Stoneham police officer.
Do you feel like he's working the system?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, no, I'm sure he knows exactly what he's doing.
We found eviction cases dating back 20 years, as long as Kennedy has been a cop. The only gap in time he wasn't stiffing a landlord when he bought his parents' Stoneham home and didn't pay the bank instead. Despite a relatively modest mortgage of less than $2,000 per month, court records show Kennedy fell $18,000 behind and filed for bankruptcy in 2015.
In most families, most middle-class families, the most important expense and the expense that gets paid first every month is the housing expense.
What questions does that leave you with?
What's the explanation? Where did the income go?
We tried to get that answer. By email, Kennedy told us he welcomed the opportunity to explain, then missed 2 deadlines to set up an interview.
Hey, Detective Sergeant Kennedy.
So we caught up to him as he arrived to work.
We need to ask you these questions about where you're spending your money. Where's all that money going, Detective Sergeant? Why aren't you paying your rent?
An hour later, Kennedy sent us this statement. It's disgraceful that my exemplary 23-year career as a Stoneham police officer is under attack. My personal financial history is no one's business.
Some people in the public might look at that and say, oh, that's personal life. What do you say?
The things we do in private, in secret, those things are going to affect how people view our professional roles. Most police officers at some point are going to testify in court. Does that affect their credibility?
Concerns about credible testimony are already surfacing in Kennedy's own eviction cases.
I remind you, you're under oath.
According to housing court documents, the police officer told a judge he had no prior history of eviction. and also answered that question falsely on its rental application for the Reading apartment complex.
This is an embarrassing situation. I never thought in all my years I'd be sitting here talking about this situation.
And there's more.
We do have a pending RAFT application.
That's Kennedy making his case to a judge of why his eviction should be delayed. The reason? He said he and his girlfriend had a pending application for the state program that provides up to $10,000 of rental assistance to help keep people in their homes.
Do you assert that you are indigent?
Well, we're overwhelmed right now, Your Honor. In one way, do I make money? Yes, I do, sir. In another way, I can't pay for everything I have on my plate right now.
He makes ample salary. He wouldn't even qualify for RAFT if he was applying to it.
Which makes you wonder how exactly Kennedy and his girlfriend received $10,000 in rental assistance, according to court documents, before being evicted from their previous apartment in Stoneham. One of many questions about money and why the veteran cop isn't spending it to keep a roof over his head.
Ryan joins us now. I know a lot has happened since you first started reporting on this. Kennedy retired from the Stoneham Police Department, and the story caught the attention of the U.S. Attorney's Office.
Yeah, Corey, it was just a little over a month after our investigation when the FBI arrested Kennedy and charged him with wire fraud. We caught up with the disgraced former officer after his first appearance in federal court.
What would you say to the landlords? You're accused of still owing them $14,000 while you live there.
Kennedy offered no explanation, but even after being in the public spotlight, he still didn't pay the rent. We were at his apartment when he was evicted yet again for owing his landlords $14,000. Last month, Kennedy agreed to plead guilty to the federal charges. He'll be sentenced in January, and Corey, that's when a judge will decide if the disgraced detective sergeant should spend any time in prison.
All right, thank you very much, Ryan. This investigation started with a viewer tip. So if you have your own small town secret, email it to tips@NBCBoston.com. Let's go to Quincy now, where the NBC10 investigators uncovered a secret also involving a police officer. It's centered around allegations he allegedly sent a photo to a woman with developmental disabilities. This officer was politically connected. His father was the police chief, and his uncle is Quincy's mayor. Kathy Curran questioned him about the accusations.
Do you think these are proper actions of a police officer, Andrew?
After weeks of not responding to our questions, the NBC10 investigators catch up with Quincy police officer Andrew Keenan, the man of the law now at the center of an internal investigation involving troubling allegations dating back to 2017. According to police reports and records we obtained, Keenan sent a sexually explicit photo of himself to a developmentally delayed young woman who was living at the Cardinal Cushing School in Hanover, where he previously worked.
I question whether these actions are becoming of a police officer.
Again, I have no comment on it. I'm not allowed to say anything on the matter.
Keenan is silenced by the ongoing investigation, but Hanover police reports state the young woman was under the guardianship of her parents when on August 17, 2017, he reached out to her on Facebook, told her he was horny, sent her the photo, and asked her to send a sexual video of herself, which she did. The report also says the Quincy police officer told her to delete the conversation, that the young woman was flattered by the attention, and that Keenan was remorseful. Andrew stands with his father, now retired Quincy Police Chief Paul Keenan, who hired him and was his boss when the accusations first surfaced. Department records show there was never an internal investigation.
It was investigated by 2 outside agencies. They thoroughly vetted. They closed the case out without any criminal complaints.
Hanover police detectives also wrote another former Cushing student told them Keenan reached out to her that August while he had been drinking, and that the state investigated him years earlier for sexting with a student while he worked at the school. That allegation was unsubstantiated. The Plymouth County DA investigated all of the accusations and found there was no evidence Andrew Keenan committed any crime, calling the 2017 case an incident involving 2 consenting adults.
We're looking into what happened.
But newly appointed Quincy Police Chief Mark Kennedy says he immediately ordered an internal investigation when he learned of the allegations last month and placed Andrew Keenan on paid administrative leave.
I think it's just important that the public recognizes that we're not an agency that covers up for our own. We discipline people, we've terminated people, and we take the integrity of our officers very seriously.
This happened while you were a police officer. Your dad was the chief. There are questions on whether or not it was handled properly.
I have no comment on any of the questions.
Andrew Keenan is out on paid administrative leave while an independent investigation is ongoing. He denies the allegations. And the state's Post Commission, which certifies police officers and oversees police misconduct, is also looking into the case, Corey.
Now, you mentioned this police officer is well connected. His uncle is the mayor of Quincy.
His uncle is Quincy Mayor Tom Koch. He says he was never notified about this case because it was handled internally by the police department.
All right. Thank you very much, Kathy. Our team of investigators also looked into a case involving the police chief in Brockton. Our Ryan Kath broke the story of an accident that he caused.
Corey, Emmanuel Gomes was in his department vehicle for the serious three-car wreck back in May of 2021, but the incident flew under the radar for more than a year until we looked into it. According to state police, Gomes' SUV veered off a ramp from 495 and struck a vehicle in the breakdown lane. It then sideswiped another vehicle, causing it to flip on its side. 3 adults and a toddler were hospitalized. Troopers investigated but did not issue Gomes a citation. A defense attorney we spoke with called that shocking. Brockton leaders told us that Gomes was on his way to the scene of a drowning when the crash happened, but they never disclosed the incident to residents. And the city has denied our request for public records tied to the crash, including emails, phone calls, and text messages. After we broke the story, a private citizen with no connection to the crash decided to pursue a criminal complaint. And a clerk magistrate ruled there was probable cause to move forward with negligent driving charges. Last month, the former chief admitted that if the case went to trial, there was enough evidence to find him guilty, Corey.
Ryan, I know you've also done extensive reporting on top cops in 2 other communities, Mansfield and Boxborough, both of them placed on administrative leave under various mysterious circumstances. To see those reports and check out the map showing where our team has uncovered small town secrets, go to NBCBoston.com/smalltownsecrets. Up next, a nasty secret, a filthy firehouse.
How would you describe the conditions inside the fire department?
The conditions inside are deplorable.
Rats, raw sewage, and crumbling walls inside the fire station. How the mayor responded to questions from the investigators. Plus, the public official who resigned once the secret of where he lived was exposed. Welcome back. Our next small town secret takes us to the city of Melrose. After getting a tip, the NBC10 investigators began looking into conditions at the city's fire stations. And they found plenty of problems. No heat, rodents, raw sewage, crumbling walls inside the fire stations. Ryan Kath has the story.
I've been on deployments with the military, and some of those deployments I've had better working conditions.
Bob Driscoll says he loved his career with the Melrose Fire Department before recently retiring after more than 20 years on the job.
It's all rotted, as you can see.
Just not the stations where he and other firefighters spend the majority of their time while waiting for the next call.
How would you describe the conditions inside the fire department?
The conditions inside are deplorable.
Is it really that bad? To find out, the NBC10 investigators asked for public records about the state of the city's 3 stations. The hundreds of pages we got back did not paint a pretty picture. Leaks from the dilapidated roof and gutters, rodent infestation and mouse droppings on kitchen counters and inside firefighter lockers, dead animals and horrible odors coming from the boarded-up hose tower, and leaking urinals sending raw sewage into the basement.
Everything's old and tired and starting to fall apart.
When we reached out, Fire Chief Ed Kalina agreed to give us a tour of the department headquarters, built at the turn of the 20th century and designed for horse and carriage.
On a cold day, can you see your breath in here?
Yes.
From no heat during the winter to no air conditioning in the summer.
It was 88 degrees upstairs.
The emails we reviewed show the chief spends a good chunk of his time letting the DPW know about the latest problem that needs fixing. While we navigated mousetraps along the hallways,
I think there's more rodents than manpower.
Many of the issues were hard to miss.
So we put this little pet pool here to catch the water.
Like the plastic pool placed in the office to catch leaks, or the disintegrating kitchen floor.
Disgusting. You wouldn't put up with this in your own home. This piece here is just...
Down in the basement, evidence the main floor is literally falling apart.
This is the condemned part here.
A section even had to be condemned a decade ago. It's now held up by these temporary pillars and can no longer support the weight of a fire truck or ambulance.
If this fails, then we're out of business.
We took the list of problems to Melrose Mayor Paul Broder.
What I have here is periods of no heat, periods of no air conditioning, mice, rats, dead animals, leaking roofs,
Yep.
Pieces falling off the roof, leaking urinals.
Yep.
Raw sewage.
Once.
As mayor,
yeah.
How do you feel about your first responders living and working in those conditions?
It's very frustrating. It is not fair or correct to ask people to work in a workplace that just isn't, by many measures, up to snuff. They're safe, I will say that.
But time after time,
certainly it's a safety issue.
Records we reviewed raised safety concerns, from fears of a ceiling collapse due to water damage, to communications equipment at risk from flooding, to pieces of slate falling off the roof. On Christmas Eve, high wind dislodged a piece of metal flashing and wrapped it around a street sign.
You say they're safe. The emails seem to suggest otherwise.
If they were not safe, I wouldn't send folks. I wouldn't send folks in them. We would have to look for alternatives.
The mayor is looking at long-term alternatives. He appointed a committee to study the best way to bring the aging facilities into the 21st century, a proposal that will eventually require a significant investment from taxpayers.
We have to do something. We've got no more time to wait.
Until then, the plan seems to be something first responders know a lot about.
It is a Band-Aid approach.
Triage and hope for the best.
Our public safety personnel deserve better conditions to live in and work in.
There was strong reaction in the community after our investigation. Next month, Melrose voters will decide on whether to approve a temporary tax hike to replace or renovate all 4 of their outdated public safety buildings. We also heard from a lot of firefighters in other towns who said their conditions aren't much different than what we found in Melrose. That's why State Senator Walter Timilty is proposing legislation that would create a fund for public safety buildings. That bill had a hearing at the State House last month, and Timilty told me he's hoping it has the momentum to become law.
All right, we'll see what happens. Thank you very much, Ryan. Our investigators also brought to light health problems for first responders in the town of Belmont. Documents we obtained revealed the medical issues were caused by chemicals the town improperly used to disinfect its buildings and vehicles at the start of the COVID pandemic. Town leaders told us they worked with the state to implement a list of required safety improvements to avoid a similar problem in the future. To see that report, go to NBCBoston.com/smalltownsecrets. Next, our investigators headed to Holbrook to look into a small town secret about alleged double dipping. The head of Holbrook's DPW worked his town job by day while working his full-time state job at night. And it appears at times those work hours overlapped. Our Kathy Curran caught up with Keith Nastasia looking for answers.
Mr. Nastasia, Kathy Curran from NBC10. We'd like to ask you some questions.
Holbrook DPW Superintendent Keith Nastasia heads for the door and keeps on moving, refusing to answer any of our questions.
We'd like to ask you some questions just about how you can work for MassDOT and for the town.
No comment.
Nastasia has a big job in town, earning $120,000 last year to oversee all of the operations for the Holbrook Public Works Department, where the doors are open Monday through Friday from 7 in the morning until 3 each day. On top of that, according to his contract, he needs to be available to respond to emergencies 24/7.
State records show that along with all of the work here at the DPW, Nastasia took on even more responsibility beginning in December when he began working another full-time job as a maintenance worker with MassDOT.
And the state says he needs to be physically on site here in Weston from 9:30 at night until 7 each morning, leaving no time to commute back to Holbrook for the start of the workday for the DPW.
We compared Nastasia's state timesheets to his town requirements and found the hours added up to some very long days in jobs where safety is key. 16-hour days during the week, and on occasion those days stretch even longer. He clocks in 24 hours straight at one point in December, putting in 16 hours with the state and rolling right into his expected 8 hours in Holbrook. Later that month, it's 22 hours straight. And on 2 days in January, he was paid overtime for MassDOT while he was supposed to be on the clock for the town at the same time.
There's nothing against hard work, but we don't know how you can do both of these jobs at the same time.
No comment.
9 hours of overtime, 8 hours regular.
Mary Connaughton is with the government watchdog group, the Pioneer Institute.
That is absolutely wrong. That cannot be happening unless somehow Holbrook said, hey, we're not going to pay you for these hours, or MassDOT said, we're not going to pay you for these hours when you're working for your other job.
MassDOT told us it was their understanding from the interview process that Nastasia was leaving his Holbrook job. Holbrook said they had no idea Nastasia was working for MassDOT. Town Administrator Greg Hanley initially agreed to speak with us, but the town's lawyer advised him not to speak, writing in an email that he suspected this would be a hit piece and not advantageous to the town.
You can come in, no camera. I'll talk to you after the record.
I'd like
advice from counsel that you've received.
Okay, I'd like to ask you some questions about Mr. Nastasia and him working with MassDOT and the town at the same time.
I mean, you have to be a Superman to be able to pull that off, to go from one job to the other. Both very demanding jobs, both of which involve public safety.
You're just going to keep recording us?
You're going to keep recording me?
We have some valid questions for you.
All right, Kathy is back with us. What's the latest here?
Well, in this case, Keith Nastasia quit his MassDOT job, but he's still working in the town of Holbrook. And the town of Holbrook Select Board has hired an outside investigator to look into his hours, so we'll let you know what happens.
All right, we'll see what happens. Thanks so much, Kathy. All right, coming up next, we head to West Bridgewater, where Ryan Kath got a tip an elected official might not be living in the town where he serves. The evidence from our undercover investigation caused the chair of the Select Board to step down even before the story aired.
Anthony Kinahan leaves his home in the morning, hops in the car, and begins the drive to his office in Taunton. It's a pattern we documented day after day, sometimes carrying breakfast, taking out the recycling, or sending off his wife before she leaves for work. Why are we showing you all this? Because Kinahan is the chair of the Select Board in West Bridgewater, and all of these videos are of the elected official leaving a home 20 miles away from Town Hall in Braintree.
I just want the truth to come out.
Jim Holden ran against Kinahan in last year's election.
I do all this because I'm committed to West Bridgewater, and I kindly ask for your vote.
During this candidate forum in March of 2022,
my concern is that he sold his home.
Holden raised the issue of Kinahan selling his West Bridgewater property several months earlier.
I'm waiting for the right home for me, and when I find it, I'll buy it. In the meantime, I'm still residing in West Bridgewater. That's all.
What did you think about his response?
I didn't care for it. That's really the politest thing to say.
Why not?
In my eyes, he was lying.
On the April ballot and on nomination paperwork filed with the town, Kinahan listed his residence on Turnpike Street, a property owned by his cousin for almost a decade.
They do not check to make sure that you actually live at that address.
When we checked, no sign of Kinahan, but we did see the cousin and her family, running errands, doing yard work, and picking up the kid from school. Here's what the homeowner told us when we stopped by this week.
Looking for Anthony Kinahan?
Oh, he's not here right now.
Does he live here?
Yes.
He does?
Yes.
I know it's right around the corner from my office, and I go by it multiple times a day. I've never seen him or his vehicle there.
You've never seen him at that property?
Never.
Accountant Mary Anderson served a 3-year term on the board at the same time as Kinahan, before losing her re-election bid last spring.
Why is it so important to live in the community where you are an elected official?
Because you're involved in the day-to-day activities. This should be your passion. I would expect him to do the right thing and declare where he's living, and if it's not in West Bridgewater, he should step down.
So how serious is it if a local elected official doesn't live in the community?
Basically, it's a question of, is that their home?
We took the issue to Suffolk University professor Janice Griffith, who specializes in state and local government law.
What does the law say?
The statute is fairly clear that when somebody removes his residence or his domicile in a particular town, it's deemed that he's vacated his office.
So if you don't live there, you're giving up the office.
Correct.
Property records show Kinahan's wife purchased the home in her name last July, just weeks before the couple married in Bermuda. And according to a copy of the certificate we obtained today, Kinahan's listed address at the time was not in West Bridgewater. It was in Dorchester, at a property his brother owns. When we contacted Kinahan, he told us he still lived in West Bridgewater, but declined our request for an on-camera interview. So on Wednesday morning, we waited outside the home in Braintree. Kinahan exited a different door and left before we could ask any questions. He then kept driving when he saw us parked at his office in Taunton before pulling a U-turn and hustling inside. Anthony, just answer a couple questions. Why are you trying to hide from taxpayers? Shortly after that, Kinahan posted this resignation letter, effective immediately, citing personal reasons and saying he no longer has the time that I once had to commit to this role. The story likely won't end there.
I think it raises a lot of questions that we need clarification on.
Ryan is back with us. So even though Kinahan resigned, this matter isn't over just yet.
Yeah, Corey, some residents are calling for a criminal investigation, both for the voter fraud allegations and for the stipend Kinahan received as an elected official. We're continuing to check with police to see if there are any updates to that story.
Of course, you can always rely on NBC10 Boston to look into a small town secret. If you have one, just send it to tips@nbcboston.com. For Kathy Curran and Ryan Kath, I'm Corey Smith. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.